You've taken your soundings. How many Conservative MPs do you think would vote against Chequers' proposal or something close to it?
So as I put on the record before we broke for the summer, there were nearly 80 Conservative colleagues who wanted a protest vote on amendments before we rose for the summer. So that is my starting assumption.
When you talk about the risk of a catastrophic split in the Conservative Party, if the Prime Minister were to count on Labour votes to get her plans through, what do you actually mean? Well,
when we launched Conservatives for Britain after the 2015 election to marshal colleagues for the referendum, people said that it could lead to the Corn Law-style split of the Tory party that people were expecting, and many of us worked extremely hard to avoid that happening. So what I mean now is that there is that danger. If this plan is taken forward, and in particular if it's driven forward with opposition support, I just don't see how we'll be able to keep the Conservative Party together.
So we are genuinely talking about the risk of the creation of a new party?
I wouldn't go that far today, but what I am concerned about is that with 2/3 of Conservative Party members in the country being against Chequers, with Chequers being criticised by both wings of the Tory party in Parliament, we're looking at a position where the government's policy is dramatically out of step with the party in Parliament and the country, and I just don't see how that is in any way viable to go forwards.
She has worked, when I say she, I mean the Prime Minister, has worked day and night on producing this Chequers plan. If she were to abandon it now, wouldn't that be the end of her time as Prime Minister?
If the Prime Minister abandoned her plan now, I believe that the parliamentary party, the party in the country, and the country as a whole would breathe an enormous sigh of relief and really thank God that we were able to go forward and work constructively with the EU to deliver a deal of the shape which they offered us in March.
So just to be clear, are you saying that if she doesn't abandon the plan, her position as Prime Minister is in peril, and if she does, she stands a chance of surviving?
I think certainly if the Prime Minister finds a way to move to an advanced free trade agreement as the basis of our relationship, I think we'll all be delighted to weigh in behind her and give her absolutely all our support. I think if she doesn't do that, I think we're in deeply uncharted waters. I think it could lead to political chaos, and I think it is today it's very difficult to forecast exactly what would happen. But when I talk to colleagues, when I listen in particular to one colleague who has formerly remained largely out of disinterest, when I listen to that colleague telling me they want to drive forward to no deal because Chequers is so untenable, that is not where I want us to be as a party. So I want us to unite behind Theresa May, behind a proposal which can deliver what the EU wants us to negotiate.
And you have been working on a detailed blueprint for a free trade deal with the European Union. When are we going to see that blueprint?
So we are going to release information when we think it is most helpful to the cause of changing the policy. So what we don't want to do is carpet the media with all of our ideas. We are going to focus on one or two particular ideas which we think are key to unlocking this particular problem. And I would appeal to the government, when they see what we release, to react to it moderately and gently and thoughtfully.
Now, it has been reported that one of the reasons you haven't released some of this stuff is because Boris Johnson isn't happy with some of it. Is that right?
Well, Boris Johnson doesn't have a veto over the work of other colleagues. What we've done is bring together colleagues and outside experts to put together their ideas, and as I say, we'll release them when we think it is the opportune time.
And all the focus on the breakup of Boris Johnson's marriage, is that good or bad for your cause?
Well, our cause is to change the policy, not the person, so I'm not really here today to comment on Boris Johnson. I mean, Boris, I think, is a great leader. He's clearly committed to leaving the EU properly, but I don't think he would mind me saying that he would prefer to change the policy than the person.
What Downing Street says, what Theresa May says, is the problem with your free trade plan is the one really big thing it doesn't sort out is keeping the border in Ireland open.
So the government made considerable progress in the way that the excise border is dealt with, and particularly within the context of a free trade agreement, which means on customs there's no tariffs and no quotas. We believe it's perfectly within the bounds of political and administrative possibility to solve the problems of the Irish border if people are willing to apply the same kinds of ideas and indeed compromises which are applied today with the political and administrative border which already exists.
Now, the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister, the government is working on contingencies for a no deal, coming up with all sorts of alarming proposals, such as requisitioning the hard shoulder of the M20 and the M26 so it can be the world's largest lorry park. This is all pretty scary stuff. Do you still yourself believe that a no-deal Brexit is better than simply continuing as we are?
So I want us to leave with good quality agreements in place. That is the goal. But as you'll know, I am intimately familiar with the government's preparations. The preparations have to meet what is the worst plausible contingency which could happen. But as I put on the record in a question to the Prime Minister, it's vital that the government acts in such a way as to reinforce the credibility of our no-deal plans, because if you're in a negotiation and you're not willing to walk away, then you're capitulating, not negotiating. So we must be willing to lead the country through a strict no-deal, nothing agreed exit if that proves necessary. But I would just emphasise that I think everyone in Parliament, and I would think most in the country, would prefer to have a free trade agreement with the EU, zero tariffs, no quotas, all sectors, which is what Donald Tusk offered. We would rather have that agreement than no deal, and that I think is the right common ground to go forward.
But do you think the government is scaremongering with all this talk of having to stockpile tons of medicines, as I say, turn motorways into car parks and the rest?
Well, all of this is about the presentation of the information. So on the issue of the motorways and Operation Stack, you'll know, and people watching this will know, that when there's a strike in France, you already have a problem in Calais. So some of this is about dealing with things the way we would already have to deal with them, even if we remained in the European Union. Even if we remained in the EU, we would have to be able to deal with disruption on the Calais side. On the other issue of medicines, actually stockpiling medicines is something which is normally done. I distinctly remember it from meetings which I personally chaired with the Department for Health. The question is the extent. But realistically here, it is in everybody's interests that we have agreements. Even if we exited with nothing agreed, it would be in everyone's interests to move swiftly to a position where for both sides the free flow of trade and cooperation on other issues was very rapidly restored.
Now, finally, many people say this party conference is going to be the most important of the Prime Minister's career. What do you want to hear from her at your imminent conference?
What I would like out of this conference is for the Conservative Party to unite around the idea that we must solve the problem of the Irish border within the framework that's credibly negotiable, and we must decide that that is what we're negotiating with the EU, and that if we can't deliver on what they have offered us, that we unfortunately will have to be ready as a nation and as a party united, ready to walk away.